Ryan, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Presentation? Okay, cool. Let's see, move that over here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get going here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Kozlowski. I'm the manager of sports programs with Special Olympics Indiana. I oversee about half of our sports, and I have a hand in planning all of our competitions throughout the year. Bocce is one of my sports, so I'm excited to explain the rules to you all this morning. And then later on, Ryan Peppel from East Noble High School will share kind of the coach's perspective on maybe how he runs a practice, how to organize your athletes, that type of stuff. And then we'll finish off this breakout session talking about some tips for running a competition. We are recording this session, so if you have other coaches who might not have been able to attend, this will be available to all of them. And then as I'm going, please feel free to type in any questions into chat, and I will answer them at the end before I turn it over to Ryan. So we're going to jump right in here. There are 4 bocce players per team. Alternates are allowed, and I'll talk about subs on the next slide. On each team, there's going to be 2 athletes and 2 unified partners playing the game. Closed-toed shoes are required. It can hurt if someone accidentally drops a bocce ball on the foot, so closed-toed shoes to protect the feet. And players should dress for an athletic competition. Ideally, we like to see them in shirts or gear that identify your high school program. It's cool to see everyone representing their school, especially at the state tournament. For substitutions, you can bring as many alternates as you'd like. You can make an unlimited number of substitutions, but only 4 players are allowed per game. So once you start a game, the 4 players that start it need to finish it. You can make as many substitutions as you want between the games. Please let tournament officials know about subs, and we want to make sure that we're substituting athletes for athletes and partners for partners. On the right, you're going to see a photo of all the equipment that you're going to need for bocce, and it's really not a lot. There are 8 total bocce balls. There are 2 colors, 4 per team. Bocce balls are about 4 inches in diameter, and these are what your players are going to toss or roll. The Polina is that smaller white ball. It's about 2 inches in diameter, kind of similar to a golf ball size. And this is the target that your players are tossing or rolling their bocce balls at. Looking at the court, a court is 60 feet long, 12 feet wide. There is a foul line 10 feet from the end of the court on both ends of the court. And this creates the throwing area on each end of the court. So on the example on your screen, the throwing area is highlighted in green rectangles on both ends. The foul line does result in a foul, and I'll talk more about fouls later in the presentation. But the foul line is exactly what it sounds like. Half court line, 30 feet from the end of court, or halfway down. And so 2 players per team are going to throw from each end. So you're going to have an athlete and partner on one end of the court and an athlete and partner on the other end of the court, and they are going to throw from that end for the duration of that game. Inbounds and out of bounds. So this is something that it's changed from year 1 to last year of the state bocce tournament. Last year was year 3. So the first 2 years, there were sidewalls on the courts that kept the bocce balls and the Polina inside the court. There really were no out of bounds. Last year, the boundaries laid flat on the field. There were no sidewalls, so a bocce ball could roll out of bounds or outside of the court. I know this is a topic of discussion between Mike and Lee and some of the folks who really manage the Champions Together competition. I'm going to go ahead and cover what inbounds and out of bounds are, but if sidewalls are used, this slide really becomes irrelevant because there is no out of bounds. So with the boundary lines laying flat, the out of bounds rules are the same as soccer. The bocce ball must be completely over the line to be considered out. In this example, that blue bocce ball would be the only one considered out of bounds. That fourth yellow one down is pretty close, but it's barely touching that line, so it would be considered inbounds. Because there are no sidewalls, there is a possibility that the Polina also gets knocked out of play in this scenario. If that were to happen, the Polina would be returned inbounds, basically on the boundary line at the point that it exited the court. So wherever it crosses the boundary line, just bring the Polina back in bounds at that same point. Again, this is a topic of discussion going forward into next year's tournament. So I would keep an eye out for communication from either Mike or Lee regarding this particular rule, because I know they're having further discussion about it. Before we run through kind of an example game or how to start a game, I want to go over just a few key rules. A bocce game is broken down into frames, and a frame is when all 8 bocce balls have been delivered from one end of the court. So that equates to each player throwing 2 bocce balls every other frame. The player order that they throw those bocce balls is completely up to the team. Really, it's whatever works for those players. So you could throw in the order of athlete, partner, athlete, partner, athlete, athlete, partner, partner, whatever works for them, and you can switch that order up as much as you want throughout the game from frame to frame. Only underhand deliveries are allowed, so no like shot putting type motion or overhand style throws. And hitting the opposing team's bocce balls is allowed. I would say it's somewhat encouraged. That's part of the strategy of the game. It's totally okay to, as you're throwing, knock another team's ball out of the way so that one of your team's balls is now closer to the Polina. That's a big part of the strategy with the game of bocce. Sorry, there we go. You're going to hear the terms in and out quite a bit as we go through a sample game. In simply means the team whose bocce ball is closest to the Polina. Out means the team whose bocce ball is not closest to the Polina. The out team is going to be the team that throws until they establish in. So that in versus out determines the sequence of play and the order that the teams throw. Teams will not necessarily alternate throws back and forth. And that'll make a little bit more sense in a bit when we get to some more slides and I show an example of that. A team's going to earn points for each bocce ball closest to the Polina than the other team. The first team to 12 points wins. There is a time limit of 30 minutes on each game. So if the 30 minutes time limit runs out and you're still in the middle of a frame, finish that frame, do the scoring, and then the team ahead at the end of that wins the match. So we're going to kind of run through how to start a match and an example of what a game could look like. So we do a pregame coin flip. The winner of that coin flip can choose to throw the ball first or choose their ball color. So in this scenario, let's say Team A wins the coin flip and they choose to throw the bocce ball first. So Team B chooses yellow bocce balls. Therefore, Team A is going to be the blue bocce balls. So Team A chose the first throw, which means they also throw the Polina. So whichever team delivers the first bocce ball is also the team that throws the Polina. Now, this 3 attempt rule that I'm about to cover is, in my opinion, one of the more confusing aspects about bocce. So I'm going to try and cover this in the simplest way that I can. Team A has because they're throwing the Polina first, they have 3 attempts to place the Polina between the half-court line and the opposing foul line. So that's shown by the green rectangle on the screen there, assuming that we're throwing from the bottom of the screen up. So Team A gets to their choice in who throws the Polina. They have 3 attempts to get it in that rectangle. So if the athlete starts off with the first attempt and they don't get it, on the second attempt they don't get it, they could hand the Polina over to the partner and let the partner take the third attempt. Conversely, the partner may throw the first time and not get it, so they hand it over to the athlete for the second or third attempts. It's the team's choice who throws the Polina on each of those 3 throws. If team A is unsuccessful on those 3 throws, team B gets 1 attempt. Now, if neither team is unsuccessful, the Polina is going to be placed at the center of the court at the 40-foot distance. And so here's an example of what that is going to look like. So you're going to notice little white circles coming from the bottom of the screen. On the first one here, you see it highlighted. That's outside past the opposite foul line, so that one would not be good. On the second one, that's too short. Again, it needs to go past the half court line into the green rectangle. On the third one now, boom, that's inside the green rectangle. That one would be a good throw. Now, if the attempts were unsuccessful, what it would look like this is what I mean by in the center of the court at the 40-foot mark. Basically, right smack dab in the center of that green rectangle is where the Polina would be placed if neither team is successful with trying to place it in there. So going forward, let's assume that you can see the white circle here. That's where the Polina is placed. So when the game starts, the non-throwing team is going to wait outside the court, and whichever player placed the Polina is going to throw the first bocce ball. So that would have been the blue team. So the first bocce ball is out there. Since blue is currently the only bocce ball out there, blue is the in ball, yellow is the out ball. So now team B, who's yellow, is going to deliver their bocce balls until they become in. And so that in versus out sequence is what governs the order of play until all of the bocce balls are delivered. So in this scenario, blue is currently in, and we'll send the rest of the bocce balls out now. So it's yellow's turn. They send their first bocce ball, and blue is still clearly closer. So it's still yellow's turn to throw. Again, blue's still closer, so it's still yellow. And now yellow is the closest bocce ball, so they are in, and now blue is out. So now is when it's blue's turn to throw their bocce ball. Blue throws, and yellow is still closer. Blue throws again. Yellow is still closer. And so yellow is still the closest ball, but the yellow team still has 1 bocce ball to throw while the blue team has exhausted all of their bocce balls. So yellow still gets to throw their last bocce ball. And on their last one, they sneak it in there. And now they have the 2 closest bocce balls. So now the frame is over. All 8 bocce balls have been delivered, and it's time for scoring. So if we go to scoring, we're going to use the same scenario. Again, a team earns 1 point for each bocce ball closer to the Polina than the opponent's nearest ball. So this means only one team is going to earn points in each frame. Team B, which is yellow, has the 2 closest bocce balls, and they're going to kind of flash on your screen there. And then the third closest bocce ball is Team A, or the blue team's bocce ball right there. So Team B would be awarded 2 points in this frame, and then Team B would also throw the Polina first in the next frame and also throw their first bocce ball. In general, the closest ball can be determined visually most of the time. You can use a tape measure if it's too close to call. It's unlikely, but there is the possibility when you measure of 2 bocce balls being equidistant from the Polina or the same distance away. And if that happens during a frame, the team that rolled last continues to roll. If it happens at the end of the frame, then the frame is considered a tie and no points would be awarded. In that scenario, the team that last through the Polina would also throw first in the following frame. Again, I said you can use a tape measure, and when you do measure, you want to measure from the inside edges of the ball. So just basically where the arrows are pointing to on the bocce balls, inside edge to inside edge. So in that previous scenario, Team B earned 2 points. They are going to throw first in the next frame. The same sequence we just showed you applies, so that in versus out governs. So since Team B throws first, their bocce ball is automatically going to be in, and Team A is going to throw second. And whoever's bocce ball is not closest to the Polina is going to continue to throw. That in-out always governs who throws. The player placing the Polina is going to deliver the first ball, and then you're going to continue this cycle until someone reaches 12 points or until the time limit is reached. So what I just showed you on how the bocce balls are delivered and how to score, you're going to keep repeating that frame to frame. After one end of the court throws, then it goes to the opposite end to throw back. So it's just going to keep rotating between ends of the court each frame. I mentioned at the very beginning that there are a few fouls. Stepping on the foul line is one of them. We generally try and give 2 verbal warnings before there is an actual penalty. So if I'm rolling and I step on the line one time, the scorekeeper is going to say, hey, Patrick, make sure you're watching your foot. Don't step on the line. I'm going to get the same warning a second time. And if I do it a third time, that would result in a foul. Delivering a ball without an underhand motion is a foul on the first time. Any ball delivered outside of the court, or throwing more than 2 bocce balls in a frame. So if I'm the partner and I threw my 2 bocce balls at the very beginning, my athlete rolls one and then I pick up the 4th one to roll, I can't throw more than 2 bocce balls per frame. So the 3rd one that I deliver would be a foul. And if any of those things occur, that bocce ball is removed from play until the next frame. All of the other bocce balls that are already out there stay out there. It's just the bocce ball that is delivered in that particular foul that is removed. And that's really the rules of bocce. That's how you'd run through a game. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and take any questions you guys have. I know that's kind of a lot of information at once. So
I have a quick one, Patrick, over the fouls. So if they throw it overhand versus underhand, or if they throw out of order, where they throw that third ball when they're only supposed to throw 2, if that ball interrupts the other balls, what happens? So if I throw my 3rd ball or I throw it overhand and it knocks the other team's ball out or it hits the Polino, does all those stay, but my ball is just taken off?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one that internally with my management team who runs bocce on the Special Olympics side, we go back and forth on it and kind of argue about it all the time, because on one hand, you could say that the foul bocce ball is removed and whatever happened with the other bocce balls, it is what it is. They stay wherever they happen to lie. On the other hand, you could say try and return those bocce balls to their original location. But the argument against that is bocce is a game of inches. So unless you can return a bocce ball to exactly where it was returned, by returning them, you could potentially be changing the scoring doing that. So on the Special Olympics side, we typically say the foul bocce ball is removed and the other ones, if they might have gotten moved, that's unfortunate, but they just stay where they are. We think that's just the simplest thing to do, because also if you try and return those bocce balls to their original location, chances are the 2 opposing teams aren't going to agree on where they get returned to anyway. One person might say, no, it was 6 inches that way. Another person might say, no, it was 6 inches the other way. So I know that's kind of a little bit of a non-answer, but it's the best answer that I can really give you.
No, thank you.
That's a tough one, but a good question. And I don't see the chat right now. I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share. Did any questions come through on the chat?
No, I didn't see any.
Okay. So at this point, I know there's only 8 of us in here. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask those now.
Okay, I'll move on then with my portion of this breakout room, and I'm going to go over on how to run a practice, and of course I'm going to go over like how I run a practice. So nothing that I say means you got to do it this way. Of course you can brainstorm and come up with your own practice strategies and activities and stuff. But I'll do a run through of what I do. To start the season, our first practice is, I'm Ryan Peppel. I coach at East Noble. This will be our 4th season for bocce, so we've been a part of it from the start, for the Champions Together part of it. And our first practice, we break off into small groups of 3, 4, 5 people in a group, depending how big the team is each year. But that group then will take a bocce ball, because a number of kids, like 99% of the kids, if they haven't been on the team before, they don't know what a bocce ball is. So it's basically like a mini bowling ball. It does have some weight to it. It's very hard. So we stand in those small circles, and that's this way they actually get to feel the ball, feel the weight of it, and to get to know everybody on the team, they say their name. So I would say Coach Peppel, and then I hand the ball to the next person. Then they say their name, they hand the ball, and it goes around. They do that just 3 or 4 times so that everyone hears their name. Then I'll blow the whistle, or I'll get their attention, and I'll say, okay, now you need to say the person's name next to you. So as I pass it, I would say Patrick, and then Patrick would take it, and he'd say the next person next to him, goes around. So it's kind of like a name game. And at the end of it, or actually not the end of it, a third one then is now they need to practice actually rolling the ball. So that small group of 4 or 5, they're going to back up and make that circle, a 20-foot circle. So now instead of handing it, they're actually going to underhand roll it across the circle to somebody. And they need to say that person's name, who they're rolling it to, so that they learn their name. And then, and at the same time, they're getting some familiarity of a bocce ball. After we do that, we all come together as a team in a giant circle, and we do very similar. We're rolling the ball back and forth between circle. I might roll. We get 2, 3, 4 balls, depending on how big the team is, that we're rolling across the circle. So this way, we're working on learning each other's names, working on bocce skills, and we're working on our social skills, because a number of times a student will want to they'll look at somebody and they kind of forget their name. So a huge social skill, especially for our athletes, is if you don't know somebody's name, what do you say? And they use their voice, and they'll say, "What was your name?" So they're communicating. They're already building that relationships, those skills on day one. Then and during practices, I have a Bluetooth speaker on wheels that we wheel out, and we're blaring music. It's a fun time. Bocce training is not like cross-country training or even flag football training. Those practices are much more relaxed. They're a lot of fun. We're jamming the music. A number of kids are dancing. Sometimes I got to remind them, hey, we're here for bocce. Let's not dance party. But it's a lot of fun. After we do the names and get to know each other, I start teaching them how I tell the whole team how to set up the courts, because every day we have to set up the courts and take down the courts. And the courts come in a bag like this. As all these are spread out. This is like a nylon, like a strap, that on Patrick's slide, you saw the layout of the court. This totally does that. You just have to spread it out. You got stakes that go in the ground. When we practice on the turf, we use bean bags to hold the corners. So Special Olympics will provide all that to you. So if you get a hold of Mike or Lee, they will make sure you get, like we have multiple sets of bocce balls. We got multiple sets of courts. So I tell the team, the whole team, how to set up the courts, because then as the season goes on, for week 2, week 3, I'm able to be in the building waiting for kids to show up, and I always send out 2 or 3 responsible students, whether they're partners or athletes, to go out and start setting up the courts, so that kind of process is cut in half by the time the team gets out there to help set up the rest of the courts. We run practices once a week from 3 to 4:30, and at 4:30, wherever we're at in the game, we stop. I only do that just because I coached wrestling for 13 years, and when we would go over, when practice was done, and we would hold up kids late, the parents were not happy that they were out there waiting on their kid for another 20 minutes. So to eliminate that, at 4:30, we stop no matter where we're at. And I do that with all my unified practices. just so the parents have an expectation of exactly when to. And a number of our athletes, they're routine based, so they want to make sure that they remind me, oh, it's 4:28. They let me know. So we stop at the same time every day. And by the time we actually start rolling the ball and getting the ball set up, because our bell rings at 2:58, by the time the kids get down to the room, our room has a door immediately to the outside. So we can walk straight outside, right out there to a grassy area where we practice. So by the time it's usually about 3:20, actually, by the time we get the court set up and everything, before we actually start rolling the ball, I will assign partners and athletes, team members, partners, I guess, the 4-man teams, the first couple practices. And after that, I kind of give them freedom to let them pick their own partners, because I don't want them to just practice with the same person. A big part of unified sports is building relationships and friendships. And if you're going to practice with the same person every day, then you're not going to get to know some of their teammates. So, I definitely try to split them up. A week or two before the state tournament, I do put them in their divisions. There's a boys, girls, and a co-ed division. So that they do start to practice a little more between their divisions and their 4-man teams, because then they can determine who's the better thrower between them and their partner at each end of the court, because there is some strategy. You're going to want to determine who can roll the ball farther, who's better at finessing the ball when it's close. So there's some strategy there that you need to learn pay attention during practices. Another thing we do during practice is when it rains, I tell them practice is not canceled. So when it rains, we are in the hallways and we do beanbag bocce. I have a whole bucket full of beanbags, and I get out. One team is red and one team is green, and they get another beanbag that's yellow, and that bag is the polina. And they'll slide the beanbags or underhand toss them, and they just flop on the ground. So we play indoor bocce. Another big team activity we do is we will have a giant circle, and I'll put a polina in the very middle, and we'll kind of go around and throw. It goes fairly quick. As soon as the other one's rolling, another person's rolling too, and it just goes around the circle so that we can watch their ball, and we see who actually can get close to the polina between the 15 to 20 people on the team. We do that usually at the end of practice just for fun. Another big part of the unified aspect of it is, like I said, building those relationships. And when whoever wins those competitions, when we do the whole team thing, we stand in a big circle and we all throw. The celebration of whoever wins is amplified. And I encourage that. We're gonna go. I've had partners pick up athletes, try to get them up on their shoulder and celebrate. And this is during practice. Just celebrating the small things really sends those kids home with a lot of excitement on the following week. I do make it like a season. So we'll practice almost 8 weeks before the state tournament. So it's pretty exciting. And I know I'm waiting for us this room's going to be shut down and we're going to be going back. I do have a handout. Bruce Wolf, who is actually getting ready to retire from as the Carmel AD, he hosts the state tournament every year. His son is getting married today, so that's why he's not with us. But he did give me some information on the state tournament, and I don't know if we're gonna have time, considering we're getting a late start on.
So I asked Mike. I think we've got till at least 10:20.
I'll go over some things that Bruce sent us on the state tournament. So like I said, we have weekly practices and we make them as fun as we can every week. Leading up to the state tournament, they keep talking about having a sectional or a qualifying tournament to get to state, but we have not had that yet. So actually every team that's registered through Champions Together for bocce makes it to the state tournament. And that is held at Carmel turf. I suggest it. We are able to get a handful of practices on. We usually, anytime on a Friday night, because our high school has a turf field. On Friday nights, if it's a home game, that means the field's open. They have the cones, everything, the pylons, everything set up already. I have permission to make sure we leave all that alone. We can go out on the turf field right after school and practice. So that's nice, but more than likely, typically we practice in grass. But if he says here, if you can practice on turf, it's going to help you for the state tournament because the state tournament is on turf. But if you're going to host a tournament, and again, this is what he wants to make sure, he gave this to us because they want to make it sectional. So they're looking for schools to be able to host multiple schools to have a qualifying tournament. You would arrange the courts side by side, not end to end, because then you'll have a really long stretch. So you put them side by side with a good amount of distance between each one, because a number of parents will come down and your teammates will want to be standing in between courts to watch. The team camps, they always provide chairs and a canopy, a tent, for some shade throughout the day. There's always coolers with water bottles. You just got to be prepared. It's a long day. It's a hot day. So you want to have some accommodations for your team members, make sure they're going to have some shade, you're going to have water. We bring snacks to the tournament. And the state tournament, it's a party. There's a DJ. There is, music blaring. There's an announcer. I'm not saying you need to have that if you were able to host a sectional or anything, but you would need an announcer to help organize and say what team is where, on what court. You label each court, you just give it a number. If you host something like this, having your AD or somebody represented at the gate to make sure that somebody's going to, when the team arrives, where to go, where their camp is. You're going to have a team meeting prior to once game starts. You're going to need a lot of workers, preferably 2 workers on each court. Carmel uses high school students, and they do a great job. He trains them very well. I do remind my parents and my team members that they are high school students. They're not adults. So if there is an error on scoring or something, you politely notify them or another official. Usually Wolfie is always the one he'll say, like, come to me if there's a discrepancy in the rules or scoring or anything like that. But it's very, very, very much a sport that I am grateful that East Noble is a part of. It really levels the playing field. Track and bocce are 2 sports that really level the playing field, no matter your skill level. I don't know how familiar you guys are with flag football, but flag football is a sport to where whether you're an athlete or a partner, the more athletic person is going to be more successful. If you're faster, you're not going to get your flag pulled. You know what I mean? So, but bocce it levels the playing field. It doesn't matter if you can throw the ball hard or soft. It does, if you can roll it, you can be just as successful as the person that's the strongest and fastest person. Like, the athleticism really levels out. And a number of our athletes that don't want to be a part of track or flag football, this is where they shine. This is what they really enjoy. We got a 2-minute warning here. So before we end up, do you guys have any questions? I know I tried to speed through that real quick, but any questions?
There was one question that came through on the chat was, what is your timeline from like call out to first practice to matches?
So I have the first week of school is when I start flag football. So that first week is when I send out reminders that bocce's starting the following week. And I guess maybe to get a team together, is it kind of, you go if it's your first year, reach out to your student council, your athletic leadership council. other key club, other organizations already established. And a lot of times those groups are already looking for something to do. So currently right now, unfortunately, marching band schedule has been competition's been canceled. So ISMA canceled that. So I'm already looking at going to recruit marching band kids that are looking for something to do. So that's another way to get some kids involved. After I have a call-out meeting, and during the call-out meeting, it's after school. We go out and I show them what bocce is, because a number of kids then will not return because, oh, that's what it is. They didn't know. Or they go out and tell their friends and they come out. The following week then, because as I said, we practice once a week. The following week is when we actually start practice. We practice once a week, leading up to the state tournament for about 8 weeks. Oh, does this mean we need to go?
We've got basically 45 seconds, and
Oh,
in 45 seconds, it'll automatically send us back to the main group, whether we're done or not. So,
okay.
yeah, if there's Ryan, if you have any last thoughts, I don't have anything else to share with anyone.
No, that's all I got. If you guys are going to be with us all day, later in the day, we're going to talk about how I organize and host matches with other opposing schools.
Cool.
That's the last session.
Cool. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning, and we'll see you guys here in a second with the rest of the group.
Yes, thank you.